Welcome everyone to the second of 6 art talks for our June 2025 residency here at Clark. Our residency theme is storytelling, which considers the cultural impact, personal expression, and audience connection in visual storytelling. Tonight's speaker is mixed media artist Maria Magdalena Campos-Pons, who describes her work as telling, quote, stories of forgotten people in order to foster a dialogue to better understand and propose a poetic, compassionate reading of our time. In 2023, she was awarded the MacArthur Genius Grant. And that same year, her survey exhibition, Behold, curated by tonight's respondent, Carmen Hermo, and I'm so thrilled that Carmen is able to join us today, opened at the Brooklyn Museum. And Behold is described as follows. Behold is a monographic exhibition of a visionary voice in photography, immersive installation, painting, and performance. Spanning nearly 4 decades of visually engaging artworks, the exhibition explores Campos-Pons' prescient and sensorial work, transporting viewers across geographies, mediums, and spiritual practices. In her exploration of migration, diaspora, and memory, Campos-Pons draws from her family story to examine the global histories of enslavement, indentured labor, motherhood, and migration. Behold ended up traveling to a number of different museums, including the Nasher Museum at Duke, the Frist Art Museum in Nashville, and the Getty Museum in Los Angeles. And I was really pleased to be able to see the Brooklyn Museum version as well as the Frist Art Museum version in Nashville. And recently, Magda and her life partner, Kamal Malik, a member of the multi-Grammy award-winning band Arrested Development, perform as Kamag at the Tate Modern. Their piece is called I Am Soil, My Tears Are Water, a multi-sensory performance merging visual installations with choreographed dance, music, food, flower, symbolic ritual, and bespoke costume to create a sonic sensory experience performed with a troupe of dancers and musicians. Campos-Pons and Malik took the audience on a sensory journey, inviting reflection on the universal themes of healing, resilience, and transformation. A vibrant tapestry of diaspora and spirituality explores our concept of radical love as a regenerative, healing force in a fractured world. And this was in companion to a large installation of Magda's at the Tate Modern, which is on view until October. Personally, I have to say that Magda was my professor in graduate school and has continued to be the biggest inspiration of any educator I've had. Not only is she an amazing artist, but she empowers people around her through her fierce empathy, her strength of will, and her dedication to building community. When she was in the Boston area, she started a wonderful storefront venue called GASP, Gallery Artist Special Projects, which offered a powerful space for conversation, exhibition, and community. And I remember myself having the opportunity to curate a show there, which was really meaningful to me. And currently, she's continuing this important work in Nashville, where she is the Vanderbilt Chair of Fine Arts at Vanderbilt University in Nashville. Also in 2019, I was fortunate enough to be invited to participate in the Havana Biennial by Magda and was able to see firsthand how much she has transformed her hometown of Matanzas and revived its cultural spirit, confirming the power of art to change lives. I even remember during the opening, the idea that there was a bridge in Matanzas that people had not been able to cross in 50 years, and there Magda was on that bridge in front of the entire crowd. It's like a really powerful moment. And overall, I continue to be struck by Magda's embrace of radical love and how she powerfully puts her enormous compassion into the world. And I'm truly honored you're able to speak with us tonight here at Clark MFA. And the respondent to Magda's talk is the wonderful Carmen Hermo. So Magda will present some work, and she and Carmen will have an organic conversation. And Carmen curated Magda's amazing show at the Brooklyn Museum in 2023 when she was associate curator for the Brooklyn Museum Center for Feminist Art. Previously, Carmen was an associate curator of collections at the Guggenheim in New York and has held roles at the Whitney Museum and MoMA. And right now, Greater Boston is so lucky that Carmen is the curator of contemporary art at the MFA Boston, and it's a fairly new role that began last fall. So welcome, Carmen. So thrilled you're part of us, our wider community. And 2 months ago, Carmen opened at the MFA Boston the exhibition
You don't mind? Oh my God.
Rituals for Remembering Maria Magdalena Campos-Pons and Enda Mendieta, which is described as the first focused look at these influential artists side by side. And though the two never met, their practices share a reckoning with displacement and exile from their homes in Cuba, a deep reverence for the land, and a transformative use of natural elements like water, earth, and fire. And this important show is on view until February 15th. Everyone, please go see that. And it's my enormous pleasure to introduce Maria Magdalena Campos-Pons and Carmen Hermo.
Thank you, Ben. This is really a special moment. It is a great privilege to have the opportunity to be here and speaking with both of you, Ben and Carmen Hermo. This is really a moment of coalescing of people and practices. They have been for such a long time in my heart. I consider you, Ben, still what I say for the younger people now, the future. No, I remember when you were a young student at the museum, the School of the Museum of Fine Art, and it's extraordinary to see the growth of your practice, the growth of your career, and the impact that your work is already having in our current practice. Local and global, because the program that you run, and to work with a curator for any artist is always a dream, is a challenge, because a curator is somebody always in a position of analytical position to your practice, but also a curator to, as the word come, is a healer. A curator is somebody who come and show you corners of your practice, a corner of your mind and your making that you are not necessarily all the time aware of it. And Carmen has been an extraordinary partner to have in this particular period. I want to say, but Carmen will say that she curated this show with Massey Harris from the Getty Museum. But I don't have enough words to express my gratitude for the kindness, regard, and a personal empathy and connections that this journey has provided for us, Carmen, Masi, myself, and also the other lower voices in the project, Janet Darie, who was a curator, the writers for the catalog, the group of people who have participated in the different stage and different other presentation of the work, from Duke to Fritz to Getty. So I before we see the image, or before I share the presentation, I'm going to give the floor to Carmen, but I also want to say, the Ben, I wanted to mention another institution that I have been working on since 2018 when I arrived in Nashville, that in some way is a continuation of a gallery artist studio projects in Cypress and Route 9 Corner in Brooklyn, because Engine for Art, Democracy, and Justice, which I founded at Vanderbilt University, was like a not forward in all the ideas that I was trying to put together at Gallery Artist Studio Projects. And also the name Engine was what I call my staff. Which were most of them students, and we will have another conversation to tell you, how proud I am of all these students who were part of that engine, who are now, some of them, creating extraordinary projects worldwide, and everybody that participate there. So Boston, Massachusetts has a very important size, a very important part in my heart. And I couldn't be more proud that you are leading Clark and Carmen. We stole Carmen from New York, and she's in Boston. So this is a win-win-win-win. Magnificent
Amazing.
scene.
Amazing double intro. I couldn't ask for a better on-ramp to saying hello to everybody out there in Zoom land. Magda, you're the best. Your laugh just brings me so much joy. I echo everything you said. And Ben, thank you so much for this invitation and this moment together. Um, Magda, yeah, do you want to start the PowerPoint? Do you want me to share
Yes,
the PowerPoint?
yes, yes. Let's launch this.
Okay.
By the way, this PowerPoint is a PowerPoint that was created by Carmen. Is exactly the presentation, sort of a take of the presentation of her first installment at of the Behold at Brooklyn, and I saw that this is very important since we have this privileged opportunity to speak to the class and to the program in Clark, us together. So this is Carmen.
Oh, you're so sweet. Yeah, I think this, I feel like one of the reasons we wanted to bring forward the Behold PowerPoints, and use these images as the jumping off point for Magda's ruminations and reflections and discussions about her work is because, like Magda and Ben said, many years go into this kind of exhibition. And so to get to Behold and to get to a good looking PowerPoint were many, many conversations about how do you take 4 decades of brilliance of an artist like Magda and turn it into a show? How do you deal with the realities of a wall space, a difficult corner? I love the way they used the word corner earlier. Thank you. I can't believe you're going through my PowerPoint. I'm like, I feel like I should be the one doing it. So we were going to kind of have this conversation where we use the themes of the show, because what made Behold, I think, so special and in many ways very resonant across all 4 venues was the use of thematic structure, right? So we could have done a show where we said, here's Magda. She was born an artist, of course. Tell the story of your youth, your education in Cuba at the formidable ISA, coming to Boston, of course, to mass art, establishing yourself in Boston beginning in 1991, and then tell that story, kind of traditional progression, right, of how your work developed, which is definitely a way to tell that story. And one of the great resources for this project was the epic 2007 book, Everything is Separated by Water. That's a show that was curated by Lisa Freeman that traveled in 2007. And that was kind of that chronological unfurling until 2007. But for Behold, we decided, especially because it was cited at first in the Feminist Center, to approach themes. So I feel like for this conversation, what I'm going to do is just say a few words about each of the themes, and then each of the themes contains lots of great art by Magda. So it's going to set you off to talk about the work. And I have some kind of questions formulated for that. But like Ben said, also, we're going to have time for questions in the end. So this is basically the view of when you walk into the space. And then the first work that you encounter, and you're doing great, Magda. Next slide, next slide. The first work that you encounter is the epic Spoken Softly with Mama. So this is you're already out of chronology in a way. We're coming into the work and exploring the work through one major multimedia installation, which is the way that you work, right? So I think in this case, before we get to the themes, if you could introduce Spoken Softly with Mama and reflect where you were in your practice at this moment.
So this is wonderful. Spoken Softly with Mama is the first installment of a trilogy the second installment of a trilogy that I conceived when I was at Harvard Bunting Fellowship, 93, 94. And it was called History of People Who Were No Heroes, Growing Up in an Slave Barrack. It was really a conversation about the history of a Black family in the diaspora. And my reflection at that moment was that story, even when it was personal, could really engage and refers to the story of many, many, many multitude of Black families in the diaspora and its connectivity back to Africa in a way that be a spiritual or to a way of archive on other forms. I conceived the piece as episodic. Part number one, a town portrait, and the town portrait was the piece that is now at MFA that you're going to see at the end of the conversation, but it was a kind of this idea, what is a portrait? What is the idea of a portrait in the history of generic representation? And I went to the other corner of that and thinking, could I make a portrait of my town? And so this is so how it come, and in a town that I have not been in a long time. So I sustain a set of conversations via telephone, via notes with the member of my family in Cuba. I was in US, and I haven't not visited that town in more than 18 years or something like that. So my mother, my aunts, my uncle, my sister, my cousins, all they responded and they described to me the town. And that was a town portrait. I always say about that, I would say more about that piece with Carmen showing. But second part was Spoken Softly with Mama. And I saw the idea of an intimate portrait of the family life. I always say about this piece, domesticity was the center of the piece, the relation to with tool and that the relation with labor and the relation with the connections with the women within the family. So they are 7 boards in this piece. They all refer to the form of the ironing board that the women in my family use for labor. The very one in the right side is the shape of the a ironing board that was in my family home when I was small, and there was my grandmother who is portrayed in the same board used. All the women in the boards, by the methodology of photo transfer and video projections, they were no alive, they were already dead, but only in the image in which they are video fleeting image, in the three boards that are alternated, they were narrative of live women. So you have my aunt, my grand aunt, my grandmother, mother's side, and my grandmother, father's side. The most important part of the piece, beside the history of the lady, was the materiality of the piece. I went back to that, to domesticity, to sameness, to the fact that my mother used to do not only laundry and ironing, but she would used to make clothing, and that I learned to cut and to sew and to embroidery within the history of the family. And all of this is in these pieces. When I was buying the material for the piece, for the small history in Boston, I went to a place called New England, a textile store in Harrison Avenue in Chinatown, and they were asking me if I was preparing material for a wedding. And because I was buying an incredible amount of organdy, satin, silk, and I was really, my approximation to that piece was from my practice of painting to, if I use the idea of glazing and layering, but I shift that. And the glazing and layering is that I put a layer in which is a material with a photographic transfer, and a second layer that is an image, they have a embroidery, and a third layer that is a video, a fleeting image, and all those things together constitute that piece. And that is what happened in this piece. Plus, the transformation of these ironing boards from the horizontality and servitude to ironing to this kind of altar-like pieces, and an homage, what I always say, the elegance and the grace and the beautiful presence of this woman in my family, not only as physicality, but as a character, as a way in how I was raised about being a proud Black woman and being a proud member of this clan of the campus in Matanzas. So there are a lot of symbolism, glass in the piece, as I say before, because in the previous in the piece that antecede that precede Spoken Softly with Mama, I use glass. Glass I always saw as a materiality of both great resiliency and great fragility. And I made at that particular time, we are talking, this is 90, 91, 92, 93, 94. I worked in that piece, in this piece from 94 to 98. I saw as there is a very interesting aspect of glass conceptually that made me think about memory. Memory is is a resilient surface, but unstable. It could be break, it could be put together, it could get fuzzy, it could be it could allow you to be in multiple places at the same time, and all of this happen in the piece. When you see the piece in a presentation like this, it doesn't present yet the multiplicity of form. They are here for a 6 video channel, for sound channel. So this is a very and always this view is when you are in the center of the piece. Behind you are other videos, they are other sculptural element. There is a lot of embroidery, there is a lot of textile. There is a sort of a repetition of form that always talk about the consistency and the repetition of the labor. I don't know, Carmen, should I have say everything that you, or so you would add something to this?
I was only going to add that, we've been working together and talking about this show since, what is it, 2020? And I still learn something new every time. I had no idea about that kind of layering where you're saying you took the kind of way of the glazing of a painting to make this piece too. So there's
But
just,
I need to say
I
historically,
love it. Every single time there's something new because there are so many dimensions to this work. And like this image might be a little bit misleading. So you were mentioning the performances. So those ironing boards that you all are seeing that don't like that where the image kind of breaks, right? And you have that border at the bottom. those are actually the moving videos, right? So Magda was talking about the still images of her family, of the women in her family, and then those three that appear in color here were all moving, right? So you have pearls dropping, you have pomegranate seeds falling, you have songs. So it's a very sensorial experience. And I feel like
and also very ritualistic performance,
Mhm.
because those videos are like 20, 29 minutes long. It required a lot of time. I did hide one at MoMA to see how long people stay. And to my surprise, I witnessed a few people that stay almost an hour in the piece. And that was very, very beautiful for me. Or when I learned I was exposed to a new English word, with a colleague called me and say, Magda, it's so engrossing. And for a minute, I was thinking, is engrossing a good thing or a bad thing? And then I came, it was a good scene. But that is the piece too was important at MoMA. This piece was, I was invited in the period that they were doing the project runs, and they invite artists. And when this piece landed in MoMA, it created a lot of conversation about what it was. And now in retrospect, I could talk about it, but it was very intense because it was that piece. I have a very beautiful moment. Short clothes and myself were installing at the same time. I was doing the tiny little rune, and short clothes was doing the entire MoMA. And I was working with Barbara London and Sally Berger, and short clothes was working with Robert Storr. And Chuck used to come many times to my space, and he was mesmerized, and as I was mesmerized by him. And they had many beautiful, beautiful anecdotes, and I have a lot of pictures of he coming to see the piece at that time. So speaking softly with Mama, this intimate conversation with women in the family. In this trilogy, the third part was meanwhile the girls were playing. The only part of the three pieces were together for the first time at the installment of the Behold at Frist Museum.
And that was an amazing special moment. So in so many ways, Spoken Softly with Mama kind of contained all the themes that you're going to be able to see in this presentation. So we really begin, this is again, the first gallery you would step into the Brooklyn Museum. And to orient yourself too, if you've been to the Center for Feminist Art, on the right behind that wall is Judy Chicago's The Dinner Party. We don't need to talk about it. We could in the questions if people are excited. But ultimately, just to say that as framing, if you're wondering about some of these corners, because the installation, the galleries there are designed around the dinner party. So there's this kind of cosmic use of the triangle that appears, which I feel like in some ways worked beautifully. But here you walk right into the opening gallery, and we call this section The Calling. And this was something that felt very important to bring up early on. I remember in our conversations, here you're getting a sense of the kind of video, the lens-based look into your work, right? So we see beautiful large-scale Polaroid works, and we also see a moving video. And in The Calling, Maisie and I and Janae, when we were brainstorming this show and thinking about, of course, how much spirituality inflects your work and what it means in relation to your artistic practice, it felt really important to bring that up forward, right? To make that one of the first kind of sections that you would see and the first ways that a visitor would understand your work. And I think that's in large part because of significant generational differences in the art world that, I benefit from, right? Being a younger, quote unquote, curator, I think I see my peers and, people of my generation, they're hungry for spirituality, right? They are looking for connection and meaning. But when we were talking about some of the artworks in this section, Magda, I know you described how the reception was different, right? When you were making these works in the 1990s and sharing them in the early 2000s, I'm wondering if you could talk on the one hand about how the spirituality comes out in the work, what it means. And there's some images, if you go through, of course, we have like individual images of the artworks, if there's one that you would rather zone in on rather than zoom out, but then maybe also, and I can repeat this later, but if you want to also kind of talk about the reception of this work, how it's changed over the decades.
What is made important in the context of this conversation that is spoke a little bit about the historical playing of this work, I say I was Maloid. Maloid, could you close your uh, speaker, your phone, your microphone? Uh,
Able to mute. Oh, I think I can mute. Yeah, I muted.
yes, thank you.
Great.
I say that I have been, I was very interested since my early life in some way, somehow. Have been always very interested in poetry, metaphysics, mysticism, to some extent, spirituality. And I grew up in the context of a Yoruba family in which these elements were vivid. So I found a lot of resistance in the early 90s when I was in several occasions asked to describe my work. And I used the term spirituality. And it seems that that particular time, that concept was misleading people to think about maybe primitive thinking or maybe still non-Western ideas that were not necessarily understood and wrapped into the context that I was coming from. And I think that my work suffered at that particular time by misinterpretation or dismissal. But I don't think that the important thing is that that never brought me out of the center of my ideas. I want to bring back too something that I haven't had. Remember, one of the most interesting book about conversation in painting was Malevich, The Spiritual in the Art. No, and no, no Malevich, Vasily Kandinsky, The Spiritual in the Arts, and that's so spirituality could be taken many different ways. In my case, I was talking about, Yoruba tradition, African tradition, or one own perception, continuity in the world from the nature to man, and its connections, which is quite beautiful. The sense of animism in which we consider that everything that breathes and moves and is around us have equal value and deserve equal attention. And the fact that we believe and we think that the reality is built in many layers, some visible and some invisible, and all of them form what we are and what we think and it count. So it was I encountered early in my work this refusal of the spirituality, or when I was called at some point that my work looked surrealist, and that was no good. And I say, well, whatever, I am looking my realism, which belong to the Latin American heart and spirit and South, global South in general. But also the kind of multiplicity of forms, to don't say interdisciplinarity, but the fact that I have been very curious since the very beginning of my career that one particular genre, that one particular media doesn't define who am I. And for that matter, that the style is not just repeating scenes over and over and over. There are many ways to practice discipline from the point of view of being interdisciplinary. And that was because we were coming to from a post minimalist, post abstract, or the big movement of the 50 and the 60 that require repetition and all the histories of and complications of the market and acceptance. So I feel that I was again many waves and currents at the same time that I was learning and uh, 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 feeding myself from that, but coming with whatever age of particularity my work was bringing. So I want to say that this section kind of honor my Mass College of Art education. The fact that I was introduced to the 20 by 24 uh, Polaroid camera at Mass College of Art, who was one of the very few places in the world that have this camera, and that it was part of the participation in the interrelated media curriculum, in which it was performance, sculpture, photography, everything. And so this particular room, with rite of initiation, very first piece of that, I did a literary in one part of my classes with Mark Lepore for Super 8 film. And then this piece is come from 1991. I did it in Vancouver, Canada, but I was just left Mass College of Art in 1988. Mass College of Art was an extraordinary program, as well as ISA was an extraordinary program. And I literally put in myself in Mass College of Art to fortify the areas that I saw that were lacking in ISA. Multimedia, photography, video, film, and performativity, because they were established. And I have fantastic people that I work with there, from Sol Levine to Mark Lepore, to Dana Moser, other people whose name I don't remember now, my fault. But I honored all of them. It was very, very, very important. And this particular moment was pivotal in my work. All this here is spirituality. I am using historical information that I know from my community, from cleansing bath to offerings to the goddess, offering to the spirit, to inviting a spiritual energy, to see scenes. This image of seeing my territory in the palm of my hands when I was far away, it comes from a very long tradition of spirituality, to see through water and to see to liquid, and to read beyond energies and materials. And what I found as an academic, as a professor, I feel what I had been in my work, I cannot judge my work, but Carmen could. Ingenuity in some way and has been very important. And I have telling to many of my students, one day before we were in the digital age as we are now, you would have the entire history of museum and art in the palm of your hands. And it's an image that I have seen, that it will be a day, I don't know how or form, but I was trying to materialize that idea in that, see, I could hold a territory and a place that I don't have access in the palm of my hand. And this piece, these are a little fragment, few fragment, and in the bathtub, which I always feel is an homage to Frida Kahlo bathtub painting, when I am real with all this koi fish, but it's all about Yemaya. It's all about this god of the ocean and her company, her presence, and then these 2 feet of people going in this spiral, which is never ending journey of encounter, of discoveries, of and a never-ending journey in circularity is both encounter of separation, new beginnings, and standing and transactions that take place. So I love this fourth image, Carmen, because they, in some way, this is a very long film, and it's in the collection of MoMA. I had spent a lot of time seeing people seeing the film, and I was very pleased to see the people in front of the film for the whole duration in every of the venues, and then see people at MoMA. But back here is the calling. And the calling, as Carmen used that for a methodological, in a way, to name an entire section of the show, but the calling was a dream. I dreamed that I was entering a priesthood service, and I knew that the only priesthood service that I need to do in my lifetime is service through art. So the calling is the image in my dream that I later turned into gallery artist studio projects at the corner of Route 9 and Cypress. It was a place to gather artists, thinkers, curators, people of all ways of living and making the community. Art, gas, we gardeners, we make food as a communal scenes, we create conversation with interdisciplinary people, physicists, photographers, theology people, museum directors. We open an entire chapter of a artist as maker in a way that was beautiful and surprising too. And it have a lot of reverberations and potentialities. In Boston, we were a do-it-yourself. I always call GASP was do-it-yourself mom and pops and few followers enterprise. That got many ramifications. And the calling, of course, is this woman in this moment of trance, in this moment of receiving information, and it was that, with the beauty of the instantaneity. I don't know if I say it in proper English, instantaneity of the Polaroid. I always have said that when I discovered the 20 by 24 camera at Mass College of Art, I saw that it was how amazing that you could perform and transform photograph in a receiver of both this document of the moment, but a continuity, because I could do it again and change it and never repeat it in a way. And it happened in the ephemerality and the transformation of time that performance and performativity require. So this camera has been a great companion, and the people that assisted me, from Tracy at Mass College of Art to Jennifer and John Reuter and a few others in the different places. I am still a friend and a deep holder of the Polaroid. Haven't do anything for a little while, but soon we'll be doing a new body of work with it, and it's a precious, and then I give myself a freedom to do very weird ideas for what a photograph is, and how the narrative of a photograph it could be constructed, and how in the idea of taking a photograph was not just taking a photograph, but constructing an entire problem to the cloud and to let it be. So I did a sculpture used to take the photo. I paint used to take a photo. I saw used to take a photo. So I create, and this piece is a good example of that. And it always each one of them narrate in a very particular way. This is an interesting combination of time. The piece to the right, a story for Abridor de Caminos, who was done in 1996, and in the other side is a house, the Freedom Trap, and Freedom Trap is made in the 2013, 14, something like that. So there's a lot of time between these two images. In the 97 series, I was very interested in Polaroid, put out Polar Color number 7. And Polar Color number 7 did something very wonderful and beautiful, registering black skin. And remember that in the history of photography, black and white together, we black become a little funny with the color. And then, so this was a beautiful, beautiful. So this particular piece was an entire experiment. It's very stoic in the selection of color. Is black, red, brown, practically, with a little touch of white in the beads. And it's every one of them is a reference to what I call the Yoruba color code. The color wheel that doesn't come from the history of painting, but it comes from the history of Yoruba spirituality and celebration of the symbolism of the color. They have been so important in my work, and that I feel in some way that the work was, or at least my appropriation of that color wheel, or what I call the Yoruba school, was important because I use it intentionally. I was using the colors with symbolism, but also being as much as I could rigorous about this is a color investigation, but it was full of meaning and a structure that could be read in many ways. The Freedom Trap was after I did, or in the preparation for the Venice Biennale of 2013, 2015.
13.
Yes, and it was the carta, a letter of the year, 1953, 54, 56 is what connected with the year of the Biennale, the year, my personal age, and everything of this together. But the letter of the year is an avatar reading from Yoruba priest. That particular biennial was about encyclopedic knowledge, and it was important. It was the Encyclopedic Museum. So I went back to Yoruba knowledge, to Yoruba and spiritual knowledge, and talk about that and the history of Cuba and few other things.
And maybe before we pass to, I'll throw a little visitor experience out there, because the Brooklyn Museum is situated in an amazing Caribbean community, long-standing, decades and decades of Caribbean families and visitors coming to the museum. And, you know, a lot of them are were my colleagues there at the Brooklyn Museum. And there's a way that this color wheel that Magda is talking about, like, just operates in a way that I had to study and learn to recognize it, right? But so many people stepped into the gallery and they were like, oh, I know what's going on here. That's Yamaya, that's Ocean. And they were, you know, they had the feeling they recognized the colors at work, right? So I love, again, all the layers of your work, all the operational kind of levers that you're pulling that, you know, are always welcoming to many people, but kind of signify new things or different things or deeper things, depending on who you are, you know? And I feel like another thing that we teased out in the calling that felt important, like you said, you know, you received the calling to become an artist, right? Because even though there are really important spiritual dimensions in your work, and, you know, you're referencing the cleansing, you're looking at specific rituals, but you have always been so careful, right, to keep kind of art and spirituality, you know, in conversation. But I had colleagues who were like, you know, I love that she's referencing things, but it's not like the secrets and the, you know, the truth is on display, right? Like, you've always said that there are things that are, you know, beyond art, that art can't touch. You know, art can help us get close there. But I thought that was always, you know, something that was kind of circulating that energy in the gallery, where people could take it deeper, depending on their own, you know, spiritual beliefs and where they come from. And so then, of course, you turn the corner and you're in Voyeurs and Beholders. This section, of course, is what ended up giving the show its title. That was a fun conversation, Magda. I remember when I was like nervously telling you all the title options, and you yourself described your own name as Baroque, which I thought was beautiful. And so there's the question of, you know, can this show really be called Maria Magdalena Campos-Pons, the one that carried the fire? Or is, you know, is that just going to get cut off on the internet and nobody will remember? So when it came time to it, and Behold really just felt like this, again, very multiple levels, right? For people who might not know your work, first of all, shame on them. But second of all, behold, right? Look at this. For people who do know your work, to kind of enter it, to enter all the different mediums. We're talking about your undisciplined way of approaching and refusing to kind of abide. You learn, right? And you in many ways, you become an expert in multiple mediums, but you're always refusing those categories. So what does it mean to kind of hold in your hands a camera? What does it mean to look at the world and create something? And so in this section, you're already seeing here, there's a lot of eyes at work. On the left, you have a work that's composed of these beautiful photographs, right? The large scale Polaroid photographs of sculptures of eyes in front of paintings of eyes. So in that work, you are completing it by looking at it with your eyes. So it's performance for the viewer, it's sculpture, photography, and painting. Then in the distance, you have a large scale work. I'll let you describe it all, but you can see that that's a portrait of an owl. And then on the right, you have the gorgeous floating mobile in glass, and that's also based on eyes, right? So this was a section where we're thinking about conceptually, like, what does it mean in your work? Have you always have, as Ben started with his introduction, you know, you tell and you uplift these stories that need attention, but you do it through your own very specific lens. So yeah, if you want to, I don't know if you want to move forward and look at some of the specific artworks that are in the PowerPoint, but if you could talk
Well,
about this role of beholding in your work.
I say too that the title, you know, that's what your role was so important. I was a little scared by the title, Behold, because I was thinking, is this pretentious? That I am asking people to, and it was a little intimidating to that. In Spanish, it's mirad. It requests the viewer, the beholder, to behold, and this piece that is called, Voyeurs and Behold of. I want to talk briefly. I don't know if that is the next piece, because that piece is the entire piece is they are paintings that I made to photograph, and literally the eyes are, when I photograph this piece, the eyes are hanging. It's a tiny little line of eyes made of hair, because I was coming from this tradition of using a lot of the black hair as a reference to build image, and I wanted to include every color. No, so here again is the color: green eyes, blue eyes, brown eyes, black eyes, small eyes, long eyes, more closed eyes, and they all could have at some moment a tear, and they are being seen by other eyes. It was not only a metaphor about the art of seeing and the art of seeing inward what you hold when you see it, and the piece that is across is the piece, and this piece, it was the Behold was in 2001, and I did that piece in the same time that I did a second piece that was not in the show, that is at the Harvard collection, that is called uh, uh, a Shooting a Star for the Fallen Soldiers. Both pieces were about the world that we live in. It was about the battles that we as humans are still fighting, the incompleteness of a work in which peace and understanding is inagreeable, sin about to sustain and support the right to love and the right to live that every one of us human in this small planet aim and long for. And when I see these two pieces together, the piece up front, I did it in the spur when we are in pandemia, and the story of Breonna Taylor happened, and I did this piece in the left was thinking of how do you memorialize or celebrate life loss, and the madness of how do we live our current lives. And flowers has been always so important in my life. I am a gardener. I live with a family of gardeners. I always have fresh flowers in my surrounding always. So and then I find out this interesting narrative as I was thinking that butterflies, because this piece is called The Rise of the Butterfly's Eyes. The butterflies build this delicate scene, this beautiful, so impermanent scenes. Butterflies build eyes to protect themselves from predators. And I saw what a magic, what a beautiful understanding of nature, what a beautiful way to be alert, what a beautiful way to practice resistance of some sort in the universe. And I love that. So I went to that, and I have been. The owl is an avatar image for me. It's connected with personal experience of seeing owls, but I come back to the eyes here, and this is a good view of the behold. I don't know if we have another image of the owl here, but the owl has been a visitor in my life. I see owls wherever I go. I arrive and the owls come at the same time or something like that. And when I moved to Tennessee, it was a lot of beautiful experience of in the botanical garden of. I live in an arboretum in Tennessee at Vanderbilt, and the magnolias of Tennessee are extraordinary. The magnolia trees are extraordinary. The owls are extraordinary. So I link these two ideas of the memory of this animal, the owl this bird who could turn his head 360 and look his surrounding in eretic position. And it's a metaphor about sensorial perception in a much larger that sight. And that is very pertinent for the practice of performativity as well in visuality. So I was using the various static perception of painting in frontality, but to speak about the potentiality of all his surrounding, of all this, if what I see with my back, and so I see with my shoulder and with the back of my body what one see, and the owl as a reference is in a series of painting in which I use different women to represent this permanency and the beautiful idea of sacred knowledge. The piece is called The Secret of the Magnolia Trees, and it's about witnessing, because this entire room is to be a bare witness of history, passage of time, moments fleeting, profound moments, challenges, all of that. It's about witnessing. And art is a recorder of witnessing. Art is a repository of passage of time that we grab in some way. So these pieces in this other area participate in that story. This is when I am not here, estoy allá, which was an entire series of pieces talking about all the complexities, of where you're born, belonging, participation, identity. And I was thinking then and now that narrow identity or narrow identification could lead us to tragedy. I am a altruist, and I am also a humanist, and I am thinking that we need to recognize each other in the other. No, that when we see somebody's eyes, we feel our eyes, and when we see somebody's skin, we see our skin. In the amazing, extraordinary beauty of the multiplicity of potentiality for color, sculpture, form, shapes, that we are. But these early pieces talk all about that in the same way, and still, all of the ideas that were worrying me at that time is still present today. These pieces are important to me because it was both combination of digital print and painting. And the way that I went with the pieces is I separate myself from the Polaroid and came to this digital, and it's both painting and printing and painting, and they become so merged and embroiled in one each other that is difficult to find out when and why this is happening. And it's a beautiful aspect for me about my own obsession with grasping details of everything that is around me. I take more photographs than edits, and I say, and then coming back to the studio and playing with them and creating this a collage in a way of and a juxtaposition of my passion for both painting and photography. Now, Carmen, I'm going to let you talking about picturing labor.
Okay, this is amazing. And this whole, conversation has been, I'm taking so many notes again every time I learn more. So picturing labor follows the Voyeurs and Beholder series, right? So there's this kind of call and response around, what Magda was just speaking of, right? Witnessing each other, finding, things that we share with each other with our eyes, witnessing history. And so from the kind of act of looking comes the act of making, right? And so in this section, picturing labor, something that I thought was really interesting, you already heard Magda speak about this specifically through the lens of Spoken Softly with Mama, but of course, great scholars, great curators have written on Magda's work. And of course, it is in many ways a vanguard conversation around recognizing the centrality of the histories of enslavement to the entire world, right? So I think also, as somebody who had the privilege of kind of zooming out and reading everything about your work, I could really see the development of how your work helped push these conversations about why the Caribbean is central to modernity, how the experiences of enslavement, so violent, so extractive, just, the worst of humanity, how that actually leads to the flourishing of culture and safety for, white Western people, right? And so you see this kind of reality happening. And of course, the experiences of your ancestors in terms of being enslaved in the sugar industry in Cuba, and also your ancestors on your Chinese side who were indentured in the same system. This was a powerful story that is a familial story, but it's also a global story in your work. And in picturing labor, we wanted to bring together these realities, right? These histories that you so powerfully explore, but also take a moment to recognize that these dimensions of labor, as much as they are violent and abusive, labor can also be creative and generative, right? So in this section, you yourself in your work often wove together these narratives of motherhood, how motherhood played a role in this historical system of exploitation, but then also how motherhood is, a place of generative creativity, and how some of the people that we, again, to build off what you were just saying, that society and culture doesn't see, right? Undocumented people who are at the margins of societies, whether they are Nigerian migrants to Italy, which is the work that we're seeing in front of us now, or whether they are you know, we're seeing it in LA and across the United States, right? Undocumented people who have been living and making their lives and our lives better for decades. Speaking as a citizen and a white person here, recognizing how these systems of control, like this act of labor, right, becomes something that can be weaponized. And so in your hands, of course, it's not weaponized, it's cared for, it's paid attention to. I think one of the most beautiful details in this section is the gold and rubies that you drape. You see this figure in this work across from us, the kind of seemingly more abstract collage piece. That's the one honoring Rita of Nigeria that you met in Italy. And her face is obscured, right? So she's honored. She has the Yoruba crown. She has the bird on there. There's gold and there's rubies, but she's also kind of protected and obscured. So I feel like with that picturing labor, thinking about labor in all of its dimensions, that was something that felt like it was also, you know, we're making a survey in the 21st century. There's so many conversations happening around labor in multiple dimensions in and outside of artwork and artworkers. And so it felt like it was something that that was very insurgent, you know, in that way. So I don't know if you, I know, and I will say also, Magda, we have about 15 minutes left of our little private chats before we open it up for questions. So I hope people are thinking and getting inspired. But yeah, if you want to go to the next one, I feel
Yes,
crazy
I
telling you to
love
work the PowerPoint here.
I love and this is I love that one because this is a very early piece. In the
Yes.
very end, it's
Yes.
called "I Am a Fountain," which is from 1990 in Canada. And I always say I was reading a book by Clarice Lispector, a Ukrainian Brazilian writer. And in the book, she described the body of a woman as a fountain. I fall in love with that. And I did this. I was interested in other scenes, the representation of the codices in Mesoamerican work. And so the idea of labor not only as a metaphor, but also the fact that a woman reproduction project is called as a labor, and we labor through it. Is something that is quite beautiful and interesting, and I have been interested in that. When in the previous piece in the back is I did this piece when I was breastfeeding my son, my only son, Arcadio, and I feel that I was both pressing milk and living milk, and I was this engine
Wait,
as
Magda, I'm
well.
sorry to interrupt you, but if you go forward, I think there's an individual image of it because you're not getting the details here. It's so beautiful.
So this one, I Am a Fountain, and it's
Yeah.
1990s. That piece was done in Canada. And it's interesting. This was part of an entire a body of work that was called A Woman at the Border. And 1990, A Woman at the Border. And Soyuna Fuente was one of the pieces. And I was very interested in on this politicization of the body. I have read at that moment my body, our body, ourself, I believe, and I was curious and reflecting too. The woman body is so many scenes, and if you are close to the piece and you could read it from the lips, what it says is ideas, thoughts, concepts. So it's not that we are just laboring humans. We labor entire institutional frame of ideas and production of fundamental things in society. But I was interested at that moment too in so many other things about the language of painting, the language of sculpture. As you know, I mix here clay, metal, and painting on wood. I mean, I am thinking, of course, some people are going to get irritated about, about these pieces. But Susan Ruben Suleiman in Harvard included a piece in new perspective of beauty at some point. So it was interesting. That piece was in Boston very early when it was done. One of the very first exhibition that I have in Boston outside Massad was at the ICA 1991, a Bleeding Heart, that was curated by Matthew Titebone, and Lisa Freeman was an assistant curator then, and she fell in love with the work at that particular moment. So this is a very important. And then here, I know that this is a complex piece when I did it, but it's everything that I was feeling. I was both. It's a homage to Yemaya, a mother of a god of fecundity, reproduction. Is the ocean is blue, but I was doing that. I was breastfeeding a young man who was not happy with that picture when he found out the picture later in the house. And I think when I think of these pieces in retrospect, I feel I am happy that I was brave, that I was no detoured in the kind of uh, whatever was that was in my mind at that time, and this odd idea of the body as a vehicle, and the body as a vessel, and the body as a conduit, and the body beyond itself. When you enter another space of representation and understanding of this, it was a very important period of the work for me, and I am happy that I used the freedom to do what I was in my mind without restricting, even when it was complex. Replenishing is a seminar piece in is my mother and myself, but both as a other entity, Jemaya and Oshun, and it's a very delicate tone here of yellow and blue, but it's something more. It's about the connection to tradition, through history, to materials. This is African beads that represent both of these goddess. And also I build the piece in the letter H to imply home, to imply house, and to imply hogar in Spanish. So I was trying to bring all this, and also to kind of capture the vitality and the, I cannot talk too much about that, this piece. I always get sentimental. My mother was an extraordinary power figure in my life. I went a few weeks ago to Massachusetts, to Boston, to the former space in was GASP was a Gallery Art Studio project, to look for a box that I left there 8 years ago. The box was there, and the person that gathered me said to me, "Oh my God, we hear that you built the floor of this building with your mother sitting there encouraging you." That is the truth. And I hammered in a finger, and very bad. And I cry and I scream, and my mother said, "Clean that finger and finish the floor." And that woman, so I don't would be here without the kind of without her being an embodiment of home, an embodiment of hogar, an embodiment of a, you need to make your place where you have and where you are, because the geography is no geography, the body is the geography. You carry within yourself what you are, and you could rebuild it every single place over and over again. Since you hammer your finger, you wrap it and continue building. And I don't think that I have a more profound a message in feminism and women power than what I learned from Esterbina Pons Leon. And this is very important, and very happy that Carmen choose that piece among the other ones.
And yeah, and if the labor didn't come through enough, I don't know if everyone heard, Magda literally said she built the floors in gasp. Okay. So when you were showing me pictures, we were trying to find, I was looking as a curator, I'm looking for the beautiful photograph of the Stanley Whitney that Magda exhibited at GASP, or perhaps the Carrie James Marshall. You know, I'm looking for the institutional 5 stars, and Magda's showing me, here's the door that I built, here's the floors that I built, here's the studio space that I built. And so again, this theme of labor is just, you know, permeates the blood, sweat, and tears of this project, really comes through. And then Magda, I'm like, I know this is my personal favorite in the show. But maybe we should move ahead a little quickly.
Yes,
The-
this
the-
is
like,
Rita,
talk
and
a
this
little
is,
bit about-
yes,
yeah.
very quickly. I was in Italy. All these pieces come from Italy, science
Yes.
specific. Sono Qui was about Black people in Italy. This is Rita. I bought real gold and rubies to do this piece, gold leaf, and the paper of what I eat when I arrive in this city. This is from the Venice Biennale, the color code, Venice 2013. This is a view of a very early pieces, Tra from 1991, and then Extreme Weather. All of them were built in Captiva. And this is another of the Eye of the Butterfly. Tra is a very important piece from the 90s, talking about this history of a transatlantic journey. This is, she always knew the space in between. It's a homage to my mother and her connection to Africa and spirituality and all of that. And it's a watercolor, which I just love watercolors and ink and wash. So I have allowed myself to swimming in those watery surface, and the one that carried the fire. I'm going to make a little point here to say something very important. This piece, they are from different periods, 2001, 90, and 2014, and 2006. Carmen juxtaposed here a very beautiful view of a piece that I did in Venice, in Padova, in all the Veneto region, in Cuba, and then the piece in the floor that is called La Viajera, the one that travels, that I carved in the Veneto region. And a piece that I did in the 90s that is called Umbilical Cord, that is in the collection of the African American Museum in Rosebery. And I never have seen these scenes
I
together.
think there should be an image there of it alone.
I have never seen that piece. That is a little blurred, but it's about all the women in the family connected. And when I did this piece in 1990, I started a piece in 1990 in Canada. It's crazy because I opened holes in the frame of the photograph, the plexus of the photograph, to pinch through it a wire to the place of the vein and connect all these women, and it's an umbilical cord. And I remember a photographer in Canada say something very positive about the piece, and I was thinking that is because I was doing all kind of terrible things to photography. But in any case, it is an important piece. But the very first time that I put the footprints of a woman in a piece is in the woman in the center, which is me, and that is the only one who left the town. And then I did those footprints in Padova with all the color of the Veneto region, and then I did a video of it. So back to say this juxtaposition of umbilical cord, La Viajera, and Caminando in Cuba, and Caminando in Padova was such a beautiful, revelatory moment for me. And I only say, I lived that, I told that to Carmen. I was extremely moved. And in the piece in the back, I always talk, and I still have the red soil of Matanzas. So this jumping, dripping in the space, in vacuity, in buoyancy, and having the feet with the red soil. De las dos aguas, it could refer a bit about replenishing, but in that case, is this duality when one person could carry two layers of material, spiritual heads, all of those things that are a little more mystic in a way, more esoteric, but is the reality. So the red soil of Matanzas in the food plant of this woman, and everything that is arriving, tapes. I did that piece in San Francisco. I found in San Francisco the devil belt flower that I grew up with in my backyard the first time that I arrived to Montalvo residence. This is Finding Balance, that talk about my Chinese heritage as well as the Yoruba heritage. My mother, father have Chinese ancestry, and so it's that finding balance between all of the scene. The one that carried the fire start with a little drawing by Arcadio that is in the top of my head and become this other understanding of a portrait, in which the portrait is the less important thing in what is happening, but is there. And it creates a totally different perception and positionality of what is a portrait about, what is the narrative, and the construction of the idea of portraiture in the Western world and in this other part of the world that I carry within myself. So the one that carry the fire. Process and performance. Here, Carmen did something beautiful, and she brought together everything. Carmen, do you want to talk? I'm going to show the image quickly. This is the performance in Cuba.
And I also wanted to shout out a little bit just in the past. You don't need to go back or anything, but the phrase roots and routes, which ended up giving that section, like Magda was talking about all the ambulations, the movement, that I do want to shout out that comes from Okwi Enwezor's essay about Magda's work in that 2007 book. So you heard from the very top, Magda's always talking about the collaborators, the people, the artists, the creatives around her, and honoring that community. So I thought, for this show, it felt appropriate to also honor Oakley and his amazing, you know, early and very concrete writings about your work. So yeah, you move from all that movement, right? Movement around the globe into a section on process and performance. And so of course, as a museum curator, it's really hard to show performance in an exhibition that becomes static. It sort of saps some of that energy out. And so what we ended up doing was bringing forward not just videos of, you know, for instance, this amazing Guggenheim performance, but also notebooks, right? And show how, I mean, it blows your mind to see the way that you just create every morning. You wake up, you write down a dream, you make a sketch of a day, you sketch massive installations and tiny ideas that then become massive installations. You know, the one all the way in the lower right is little fragments of plants that you gathered in Matanzas. There was another page, I wish I could have shown 500 of your notebooks. There was one page that made me laugh so much. There was a little dead fly that was taped into the book, and you wrote visitor to the studio. And I just love that. Okay, you have, sure, curator studio visit, but the fly was looking too. You know, I thought that was so beautiful. And like all those just little treasures of how you create, how you think. I feel like that was also another moment to bring together, you know, you have the magic of the performance. Even in this photo, it makes me laugh because you're seeing the bottom part of a mural that showed people looking at you while you're performing a very sacred, amazing, mind-blowing, deep performance, but somebody's still holding their beer because they're tired and it's hot and they're on the Malecon in Havana. And so there's like that sense of energy of like how performances happen that I feel like, you know, we tried our best to capture your magic, but but the notebooks went pretty far for us on that.
You did. So this is what I want to say, and this is a few image.
Yeah, maybe if you want to end on this image, maybe
Yes.
then if people have questions, we can get to other people's questions, or we could take the time to talk about the MFA show too. But I'm just saying, everybody out there, get ready to either ask your question verbally or put it in the chat and I'll read it.
So that image, I want to say what I want to say before I answer the question. The privilege of being in conversation with a curator who have dedicated so much work and energy to attend to the work, and in every one of these performances are many of my students. I could see Del Hamilton here, and I could see in the previous one I saw 3 of the students, and it's a very for me this has been very important to model ideas and potentiality to my students, and gathering is very important as well. So this I'm happy to sometime activate places in different way. This is the center courtyard of the Brooklyn Museum that never before hosted a performance piece. And when I was invited there, I immediately saw this is an opportunity that cannot be passed. This incredible space need to be baptized with, and so all of those things have been important. I don't know, see, Carmen, do you want to share your screen with it to share something else?
Yes, let me see if I can. I'm going to stop your sharing here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to share. Let's see. Um, not that one. Wait. I have too many windows open since I'm on my work computer. Okay, found. Let's see. And then I'll do view. Great. Yeah, so we're all here together in the Zoom space. And Ben mentioned that her incredible installation is on view at the Tate Modern until October. And much closer, if you're not able to get to London by October, you can come to Boston to the MFA to see this focus exhibition called Rituals for Remembering, Maria Magdalena Campos-Pons and Ana Mendieta. So Ben introduced this project a little bit, but you're seeing already the image, the 2013 image from the Venice Biennale that Magda had introduced earlier. And this was a way to draw specifically from the MFA's collection. Here you're also seeing Magda checking out the the ephemera case with some of this material from GASP, right? So there you have the storefront of the gallery and studios that Magda was just mentioning, some images up top of her phenomenal 2015 exhibition at the Peabody Essex Museum. One of those sculptures is on view there in Salem. If you're around Salem, absolutely worth seeing in person. They also have a fantastic online website of that whole project that's just really great. And this is the whole reason for this project, for this exhibition that's currently on view. The MFA 2 years ago acquired this formidable work, A Town Portrait. Magda introduced it at the beginning of the talk. And here we have it installed in conversation with other works, right? We also have the Sacred Bath that Magda talked about earlier. And I'll just skip ahead for a moment to show you other prints and photographs from the MFA's collection that are on view in tandem with work by Ana Mendieta. The photographs are also in the MFA's collection. We happen to have a phenomenal group of 7 photographs and 2 silhouettes on leaves, not even any leaf, a magnolia leaf. So the connections, you heard Magda talking about the magnolia leaf and the secrets of the magnolia trees. Mendieta, the kind of presence of the body, the absence of stories, the surfacing of these realities, I think comes up in the town portrait, right? In the way that this is the portrait that you were talking to earlier. So in a way, this loops us back to the top of the conversation. And so since we have some time, I want to ask folks, don't be shy. I know there's plenty of artists on this call. And so what do you think? Do you want to throw a question in the chat? If people, let me see if I could show a grid. I don't think I'll need to stop the view, but if people want to come off mute or if you want to put up a hand and we can call on you.
Well, first, can everyone unmute and we can give Magda and Carmen a hand for their wonderful conversation? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we only have about 10 minutes, so I'll keep an eye out for some questions, but in the meantime, I'll throw one out there as well. And I'm just curious, I guess 2 things. One is the sort of presence of fragmentation in your work. Magda, has always been a really interesting sort of strategy where things are kind of coming together as pieces, and the way you use photography in such an innovative way, where it's a single unique image, but often they kind of exist in sequence. And they also have a very kind of architectural capacity. And so at the same time, they kind of grow and become like scaled up. At the same time, they also have a kind of fragility and a kind of individuality to them. So I was hoping to hear about how that sort of practice emerged and how you kind of reflect on that now.
Well, that's an excellent question and interesting observation of the work. Uh, I have always said that most of the time I have worked for many years in the scale of my hands. No, I spend a very significant part of my practice building just my work all by myself. So, and also I work for many, many, many years in a very restricted space sizes. And I learned from my son too. I think that I learned a lot from seeing Arcadio playing Lego. There was something there and blogs about a augmentation of gesture, but adding a small fragments into something much, much larger. Uh, I work all the time. No, I'm working all the time. I work in hotel rooms, wherever I am in the world. I work in planes. There is an incredible amount of drawings that I have done in my phone. There is an incredible amount of drawings that I do in my iPad that I never put in any place of anything. So the idea of the idea of a scale, no, what scale you need to use to construct an scale that could be heroic, since that is the case, is very relevant for me. And I always think that you could go from the miniature. No, remember that fantastic chapter from Susan Stewart work on longing, from the miniature to the gigantic. No, and that is something that is very important for me. I am also, because I have been very interested in installation art since very young.
And that's fine. I was going to ask a question about installation art, and then she said installation.
Oh, wait,
Hello?
someone is talking. All right, hold on. Yeah, please continue, Magda.
So installation art is series not completely ephemeral. So you have any idea? The piece that Carmen mentioned show a history of people who were no hero, a town portrait. I storage for 30 years. for 30 years. So I am so happy that I have a home, but they had a few installations still in storage. So I needed all these pieces, the mantle themselves, literally. They become flat. They become, you could put it in a small container rather than, so those were a strategy of survival. Those were not far away from me refusing not to build a floor, but build a floor with the story of the floor is there was an entire floor of plank of 12 feet by 1, and the guy in Home Depot said, but you cannot do a floor with that. And I said, yes, I'm doing a floor with that. And he came to gasp and ended helping me because he couldn't believe what I was doing. So in some way, I would say that it's a little bit of a rebel on me about playing outside the box. It has been to my freedom space. No, the piece that I am seeing behind Alchemy of the Soul, a very complex piece, is made by a Lego piece. It's made by fragment by fragment by fragment. But imagine from the very beginning, I always have said to Ben, if I see it in my head, it's possible. No, see, I could see it. See, I could see it. All the rest of the thing is engineering, physics, alchemy, materiality. No, and that is this has been a very important point for me. They are pieces that I have dreamed that I have not realized yet. Larger, architectural. I will, I hope, sometime. In a more monumental way, but I also have this idea that there is a lot of monumentality in my work already. No, that piece at the Alchemy of the Soul at the Peabody is very imposing piece. It's kind of impossible to think. Except when I was working with that piece and I was working with Linda Ross, I was saying, hey, glass is a material of architecture. See, we could build towers skyscrapers with glass window that stand to tornado wind and hurricane and lightning. How could we not build something, that is small, that tangible in that? So there is something very, it's a kind of reassurance in my intuition as maker that every piece that I imagine is doable, that every piece that I envision is doable. There are a few scenes that I have, like the piece in, there are a few pieces that I need to finish. That and they have entire body of work that I have in progress. I started a piece in Pilchuck when I was a visiting artist in Pilchuck. The glass watch I haven't. It's all in storage. Half made. No, I would bring it out one
Magda,
day.
there's a really, Janine who chimed in a little bit earlier, definitely in tandem with the answer that you're giving now, but she's specifically asking like, what advice would you give to artists who are interested in making installation art but don't have a team but have big aspirations? I feel like you're inspiring us with the big aspirations, but is there something functional?
Well,
Legos, very inspirational.
when I start doing installation art without a team, I started with the team Magda, no, and the team Magda was in the scale of Magda. And when Ben asked that question, I say, I didn't make Alchemy of the Soul by myself. This is a piece that required a very serious, capable glass workshop. And that was Linda Rose, which is in Massachusetts. We studied together at Mass Art. We are friends since we were colleagues as peers, as students. But for you, my recommendation would be once your materials. The piece that I didn't put a lot of emphasis by Sonia Qui, I did it in 2006, and I arrived in Italy without much money and with no studio. And I started to collecting the paper of every food that I consume. At that time, I was eating cheese, I was eating fish, I was eating prosciutto. All the paper that is in that piece is the original paper of the food that I ate and my family ate. And then when I have a penny of money, I say, oh, I'm going to activate that. I'm going to put very valuable jewelry work, rubies, gold, gold leaf of the best quality ever, together with this greasy paper. And in the piece is the grease or cheese from Italy. And I didn't even think at that moment. I have that question when a museum wanted to buy the piece and asked, well, the grease in the paper. I said, what? This is the role of conservators. Is the museum have interest in the piece to figure out how to protect and save and maintain in the future? Is this needed in that way? Because I think that the museum of the future is going to be in a different materiality, in a different form, and that the old work that we do is ephemeral. No, and that all work that we do is material, is us, will transform itself in something else. You need to make your material your dexterity. I was fast and furious. I am still that way. I was hungry, very hungry, as a young artist, for my own idea, from my own tool, for my own ability to do things, and I am still at that level of hungriness. I am surrounded. I don't want to show you around, but I am in my living room. But everything here is in a studio too. My dining room table, my island in the kitchen, my everything. Because see, I wake up at 3 a.m. because I cannot sleep. I am a kind of mature lady now, and after you pass the 60, you start sleeping less. I work at 3 midnight and 4 a.m. Uh, and I am doing a piece that is like a tiny little, in the art store they sell the little watercolor postcards that you buy a packet and you have 10, but I am making an entire piece about that. No, because this is such I could paint this watercolor postcard any place. When I am bored, listen to something that I am not interesting, or if I am, if I am waiting. So if some of you are there making drawings, I understand you. I was that woman. I was that person that made, while somebody talking, I am building an entire group of new ideas. My doodles. So uh, you could be an installation, and I'm going to say this. They are a missing example of installation work that is ephemeral. Let's say Do Hoso, the Korean artist. Hey, he now have an entire factory of people sewing for him. But was he sewing with very soft fabrics? And imagine, what about if I could make the shadow of the phantom of my home just with tiny little piece of fabrics? No? I don't want to say example, because when I put example, I always feel so bad that I privilege some people over others. And I love so many artists. That's the other thing. I am in love with my colleagues. I am in love with my contemporaries. They are always an incredible source of enthusiasm. No, I don't feel ever. There is so many people that are extraordinary, marvelous. Let's say Felix Gonzalez Torres. No, when I teach installation art and performance, I have an exercise that is a portable room, and a portable room is this fantastic curtains that Feli Gonzalez Torres built. No, he made this threshold, this entire walls of this entire umbra, of possibility, just touching the little bits, open a little space and passing. But they touch your skin, and they are all around you, and you are part of an experience that you could not imagine ever before. No, with the simplicity to put one bit at a time, a plastic bit at a time. No, how amazing is that? How fantastic is that? Or Ana Mendieta making a drawing in, we all, in a leaf of a tree. How amazing! Where that leaf was from, when she got it. How delicate she drew in it, that 40 years later is still this line beautiful. No different than if you have the privilege to see a sketch of Raphael for the School of Athens, and you could see how he drew those figures. No, and all of that. Imagine the kind of installation that you could do with an entire day of autumn leaf in Massachusetts. no, Anthony Gormley, no, Andy,
Goldsworthy.
I can never say his name, understood that and used it, no, the passing of the seasons, the passing of the season, the extraordinary seeing of a drop of water frozen is you redirect the water, no, the color code of the leaf on autumn, you know, from chrome to sepia to purple to whatever. So what I love about installation art is that I always, when I teach that class, I used to tell the students, to since you mark your territory like a dog, no, you go, put your legs up, piece there, and everybody remember, no? So you go to the tail, you will see how I pieced the tank. And so you see the history of the people there. And that is that. You need to, you work with something in which you mark the place some way, somehow. You bring your own mark. And you need to trust that. You need to trust your instinct. You need to trust your views, your vision. You must trust your vision, but because it's precious. It's absolutely precious. And the other thing that I ask my student, read, see, as much as you can. Fight for your food. Fight for your food. And anytime that you are seeing, and anytime that you are reading, and anytime that you are nourishing yourself endlessly. I think that is very important. I know that I have a two retrospective behind me, but I feel that I am starting something. No, I don't. I mean, yes.
Well, thank you so much, Magda, and thank you so much, Carmen. Can we all unmute one more time and give them a hand?
Thank
It's
you.
been such a
Very
wonderful
powerful.
conversation.
Thank you to
Thank
you
you.
guys. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. That was very inspiring.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank
Thank you.
So
you.
much.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, good night, everyone. This has been recorded. We'll end it. We'll put it on our YouTube, and thank you so much. Okay, bye-bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
Carmen. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, all the
Thank you,
students.
everyone.
Ben.
Thank you, Magda. Thank you,
Yes.
Ben.
Thank you. Bye
Bye.
now. See you soon. Bye.